everybody. Welcome to Sunday Night Ghost Stories Extra, because we are on a Friday. Oh my goodness me, my glasses are all a bit wonky at the moment. These are my normal glasses. I've left my normal glasses around a friend's today, so these are my emergency kind of. Goodness me, we are going to bend that arm up a bit because that's why that's a bit better. Yeah, I left them at my friend Julia's today. So anyway, here we are in the library. He said grandly. As you can see, it's a sweaty old evening tonight. It's quite hot out there. What are we reading? We are still cherry picking our way through Ghost Stations by Bruce Barrymore Halpenny, the late Bruce Barrymore Halpenny, and we are on to, I think we're on Ghost Stations 3 at the moment, but I'm just dipping in and out of the books to try and find the ones that are readable, because his first Ghost Stations book is, I think he had an editor on it, and so there's a good kind of linear flow to all the stories. His subsequent ones, that's when his punctuation is terrible, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, what are we drinking tonight? 2-beer strategy. We're on the Caballo Blanco English Summer Ale. Ooh, this is one of the subscription beers, 5.2%, product of Mexico. Brewed and canned for Campona Cervecería Hercules in the EU, imported to the UK by Beer 52. Ingredients: water, barley, and wheat malts, hops and yeast. Allergens, including gluten, shown in bold. Store cold, drink fresh. See base for best before. I'm not going to turn the can upside down. So, Caballo Blanco English Summer Ale. Little illustration of a horsey there having a rest. What are we washing it down with? It will come as no surprise that we are washing it down with the Balmure from Lidl, of which I'm going to have to get another bottle because we're on vapors tonight, and we haven't even read a ghost story yet, and already we have a dead soldier. And Run VT.
Oh, it's jolly nice of you. Hello, dead soldier. Seen plenty of those in my time.
Marvellous. Right. Phantom soldiers. The previous chapter took up the whole of Wednesday's show. Goodness me. Anyway, the previous chapter has just dealt with flying saucers and the possibility of going back in time. But what about the future? Is it possible to break into the time zone and see into the future? Not to forecast the future, but actually see the future. In June 1812, 2 cattle herders did break into the time zone and glimpse the future. But to them, it was just a phantom army that they witnessed and could not explain the meaning of what they had seen. It was a beautiful sunny Sunday morning in June 1812. He's done it again. I'm going to try not to keep breaking the narrative flow, but he's done it again. It was a beautiful sunny Sunday morning in June 1812, and, the 2 cattle herders. Every time he writes the word and, he puts a comma after it. It doesn't need a comma. It's and is your linking word. I've got to have to straighten these glasses up. What do you do on Friday night? I tuned in to watch Sunday Night Ghost Stories Extra, but instead it was a confused man from Dudley with wonky glasses banging on about ands and commas. Anyway, it was a beautiful sunny Sunday morning in June 1812, and 2 cattle herders, Anthony Jackson and Martin Turner, were herding cattle in a field a few miles just south of Harrogate in Yorkshire, when suddenly, as if by magic, a vast army of heavily armed soldiers appeared. One minute they were alone with the cattle, the next they were surrounded by a phantom army. Without a sound, the soldiers, all dressed in white uniforms except their leader, who stood out amongst them in his scarlet uniform, moved menacingly forward. As the Phantom Army moved nearer towards them, they carried out military infantry drill exercises with their muskets, all of which was carried out without a sound. It was an eerie spectacle, a ghostly spectacle that was being played out before their very eyes. Suddenly, the vast Phantom Army halted not more than 100 paces from where Anthony Jackson stood. In eerie silence, the Phantom soldiers stood, their muskets at the ready. Jackson, a man in his early 50s, and Turner, a man in his late 20s, both felt compelled to turn and run. But they were unable to move, as if rooted to the ground. And they trembled with fear at such an awesome sight. But as the drama unfolded, their fear evaporated away. As they watched, the soldiers formed into a single column, 4 deep, and at the head of the huge column, the soldier in the scarlet uniform. All this being carried out in complete silence and without any word or form of command. The thousands of soldiers stood as if waiting to march into battle, armed and at the ready. Then, without any command, the silent army turned to the left and, with the soldier in the scarlet uniform leading them, they quick marched to the top of a small hill and then halted. The huge column of Phantom soldiers covered the hillside. They stood in silence. Throughout it all, Jackson and Turner stood transfixed, but there was more to come. For crossing the field to the right was another Phantom Army. These Phantom soldiers wore dark blue uniforms and, like the other Phantom Army, moved without a sound, marching in strict military order. Thousands and thousands of soldiers converging on the white uniformed army of soldiers. The Phantom Army of blue uniformed soldiers was much larger than the first army, the leader of which remained on the top of the hill. The white uniformed Phantom Army held fast on the hillside as the second army advanced towards them, nearer and nearer, until they marched right up the hill and into the first army. The two armies became locked together, the white uniforms and the dark blue uniformed soldiers at the top of the hill. Then, as if molded into one unit, the united armies wheeled to the right and marched down the hill. As they did so, a mist rolled across the fields towards them. As the silent Phantom Army neared the mist, it began to thicken and gradually engulfed the Phantom soldiers. Within a few minutes, the dense mist started to thin, then vanished altogether, leaving no trace of the Phantom soldiers that had marched into the mysterious mist and swallowed them up. I need a drink because my throat's a bit dry. We've gone past the 10-minute mark, so cheers me beers in the magnificent Rush beer glass, courtesy of friends Kirsten and Steve in the United States. Says on the back, books are for tourists, beer is for geniuses. Quite agree with that. Not bad. Anthony Jackson and Martin Turner looked round them in complete bewilderment. They both stared at where the two great armies had been deployed. Everything was back to normal. The birds were singing again, green fields and clear blue sky. No signs at all of the silent Phantom soldiers. Not a trace. Had the two cattle herders glimpsed into the future that Sunday morning in June 1812? Afterwards, Jackson said, "As I watched the two armies, everything around me seemed still and quiet. No movement other than the two armies, which were completely noiseless. My vision was focused only on the soldiers, who were very clear, but all around me seemed blurred." To the two cattle herders, the whole phenomenon was an eerie, frightening experience. To be confronted by two Phantom armies on a beautiful sunny Sunday morning was enough to unbalance the mind. They both said the combined armies covered an area of well over 40 acres. But Jackson and Turner did not seem afraid or unbalanced in any way. What they had witnessed left them frightened, but only frightened because they could not understand. They both said they felt no fear, even though there were thousands of soldiers. So if they had seen into the future, what had they witnessed? In the spring of 1812, Napoleon Bonaparte massed his Grand Army, about 453,000 men, including contingents from Prussia and Austria in Poland, to intimidate the Russian emperor. As the soldiers crossed the Niemen River, the Russians retreated, adopting a scorched earth policy. Napoleon engaged the Russian army at Borodino on the 7th of September 1812, and after savage and bloody fighting, entered Moscow a week later. But the Russians had abandoned the town, and the day Napoleon entered Moscow, a huge fire broke out, destroying most of the town. Napoleon was forced to withdraw at the premature onset of winter. Napoleon was forced to withdraw, and the premature onset of winter made it disastrous. After a difficult crossing of the Berezina River in November, fewer than 10,000 men fit for combat remained with Napoleon's main force. The Prussian contingents deserted the Grand Army a few days later and turned against the French. The Austrians also withdrew their troops and adopted an increasingly hostile attitude against the French. The rot soon spread. In 1813, the forces arrayed against France were no longer armies of mercenaries. The Allies were gaining new troops every day, as one German contingent after another left Napoleon to go over to the other side. Was this what Anthony Jackson and Martin Turner had witnessed that sunny Sunday morning in June 1812? It is interesting to note that the counter-revolutionists were termed the White Terror. Were they the White Army? Napoleon Bonaparte entered the French army in 1785 as an artillery officer. In 1804, he became Emperor of France. Thereafter, he won battle after historic battle, defeating the Austrians and Russians in 1805, the Prussians in 1806, the Russians again in 1807, the Austrians again in 1809, the Russians again, albeit only narrowly at Borodino in 1812. Then the disastrous retreat from Moscow. For nearly 20 years, Napoleon's armies fought across the length and breadth of Europe. So, had Jackson and Turner glimpsed into the future, or had the Phantom Army been a warning of some kind? I think we'll have a quick swig of the old beer. Slange me bar. So, had Jackson and Turner glimpsed into the future, or had the Phantom Army been a warning of some kind? The Reaper's bomber was such a warning of doom when it was seen over RAF Lisset in Yorkshire during the Second World War. The story of the Reaper's bomber is told in ghost stations. You could say the Phantom bomber was a glimpse into the future, for it came as a warning of doom. I don't think so, Bruce. Over a century later, a grass field at Dunkerswick, just south of Harrogate in Yorkshire, was used as a landing ground by B Flight of number 33 Squadron Royal Flying Corps between March and October 1916. The site, which covered an area of some 40 acres, was also used by number 76 Squadron during their patrols in this area. It was an excellent site, but for some unknown reason, it was never developed. Yet, at that period of the First World War, landing grounds were urgently needed. It was rumoured the site was haunted by a Phantom Army. At the time, a pilot of number 33 Squadron said, "I was just turning into the wind when I saw them below, a whole army in white uniforms. I turned away and glancing back, there was nothing there just a slight ground mist. By this time, 1916, the story of the Montrose ghost had spread through the Royal Flying Corps and was on everyone's lips. But he's done it again. And, comma, was on everyone's lips. Doesn't need the comma, Bruce. Captain Balfour, later Lord, heard the ghostly story in 1916. Montrose is haunted, was the cry. Comma, it was obvious. Doesn't need the comma. And it was obvious the Royal Flying Corps did not want another haunted airfield. One was too many. There were many rumours which could be the reason why the site was never developed and had no further aviation connection. Yet, just a few miles southwest, Yeadon, better known today as Leeds Bradford Airport, was opened in 1931. Had the Phantom Army had a hand in helping the Royal Flying Corps decide against developing Dunkerswick into a wartime airfield? Just over a century earlier, the Phantom Army had marched across that very field, that bright, sunny Sunday morning in June 1812. Yeah, I'm going to say, Bruce, that's kind of weak sauce, mate. But we are going to mark the, I'm just going to mark the page with a pencil, so I know not to read that one again. What are we up to now? The Silent Sentinel. Oh, that's a nice short one. It's time for a beer. And straighten these blessed glasses again. That's better. Cheers, me beers. Oh, slange me bar. In case you're wondering where his derpiness is, he's outside on the patio. I'll show you a picture at halftime. Chapter 6, The Silent Sentinel. The Keeper of Memories is the key to many of the strange paranormal happenings, and the control tower is certainly the keeper of memories on all airfields. I think we read this one before, but we'll just carry on. At Royal Air Force Topcliffe, the UFO was first sighted over the control tower. At Royal Air Force Linton-on-Ouse, it was the control tower which was again at the centre of the hauntings. Does the control tower hold the key to all the earthbound spirits? That is certainly the case at RAF Leconfield near Beverley in Yorkshire. During the period 1970 to 1976, John Brown was Senior Air Traffic Controller, SATCO, at Royal Air Force Leconfield, which was an operational fighter station. The squadrons based at Leconfield during that period were numbers 5 and 11, flying the supersonic English Electric Lightnings. The station also housed a Lightning, Seppercat Jaguar, and McDonnell Douglas Phantom maintenance unit, not those kind of phantoms. And other than jet fighters, Leconfield also had a 24-hour commitment to B flight of number 202 Squadron with helicopters. With the helicopter unit, it was always necessary to have a duty air traffic controller, ATCO, available. Thus, the ATCO usually slept in the officer's mess on immediate call, should it be needed, and an assistant who slept in the air traffic control tower. Are we all taking notes? I hope so. The air traffic control staff at RAF Leconfield were all civilians, but all ex-Royal Air Force, and held both Civilian Aviation Authority licenses and Royal Air Force certificates. Most of the controllers were ex-Fighter Command. It was all rather unique, said John Brown. As Senior Air Traffic Controller, I was overall responsibility as the station commander. I had retired from the Royal Air Force in 1970 as a flight lieutenant. I returned to Leconfield virtually immediately in a civil capacity. In early 1971, John Brown started to hear rumours that the assistants were becoming increasingly disturbed at spending the night alone in the control tower. Several had stated that on several occasions footsteps had been heard in the visual control room, yet, upon investigation, everything appeared normal, except for one night, as John Brown recalls. The assistant on duty that night was a young man of high intelligence and not given to imagination without due reason. He certainly was not neurotic. Sometime early in the morning on this particular day, around 0200 hours, he heard noises from the visual control room and crept up the stairs to investigate. It was a full moon and the room was bathed in moonlight, and he stated that he saw, sitting at the control desk, an apparition with its back to the assistant and dressed as a Royal Air Force flight lieutenant. There was no materialization to the apparition. Needless to say, the assistant bolted to his room on the floor below and locked himself in. After his ghostly encounter, the assistant duly reported the incident to John Brown, the SATCO, and, upon investigation, he heard from the other assistants about previous eerie, haunting noises, although no one had actually seen anything. It also came to light that many other people had seen a mysterious airman in and around Number 1 hangar and the old wartime Nissen huts. Those who had witnessed the ghostly airman said they had a cold feeling, and he moved around as if he was looking for something or someone. But for one airman, it was much more frightening as he crossed near the old Nissen huts early one foggy February morning. I was just near the Nissen huts when a figure in front of me turned as if to ask me something, said the airman. I then saw he had on an old wartime flying helmet, but no face. The young man who had seen the ghost airman in the visual control room was petrified at having to stay in the tower at night, and before long left to work elsewhere. The keeper of memories remained the silent sentinel. After further research, it came to light that a flight lieutenant air traffic controller had committed suicide on the station, although not in the control tower, and the young assistant who saw the ghost was unaware of that. So, was it the ghost of the flight lieutenant who had committed suicide and returned to haunt the control tower? It is interesting to note that the keys for entry to the control tower were 2 sets only, one held by the duty controller and the other by the assistant. The control tower was securely locked. But what about the other ghostly figure in the old flying helmet, the ghost with no face? It is said that he could be the ghost of one of the crew of the Handley Page Halifax bomber MZ464, which crashed on the 25th of February 1945, killing all 6 crew when it hit high ground at Brantingham near Brough in Yorkshire during descent in bad visibility. The Halifax was being flight tested and was piloted by Flying Officer Max Hubbard, Royal Australian Air Force. His last words were with the control tower at RAF Leconfield, the silent sentinel. I think we will have a thunderclap. Right, from this point onwards, I think we have No, I don't think we have. We certainly have read The Silent Few because I've marked that one. So, okay, let's crack on. What are we up to? 25 minutes. I think this next one looks nice and short, thankfully. So, Slange me via everybody. Oh, lovely. Cheers. The Hauntings, Chapter 8, The Hauntings at Royal Air Force Bentwaters. Does a ghost or two haunt the Bentwaters flight line? Who knows? There have been many eerie stories and many unexplained happenings, ghostly happenings. As soon as it is dark, a strange and evil atmosphere comes over the airfield, said one airman, and he added, a lot of people, me included, don't like to go out alone on the airfield. This was confirmed by one of the security guards who said, it is something you cannot describe, a cold, eerie feeling as if you were being watched. Wish I was, but anyway, and we've got some viewers tonight. Anyway, Royal Air Force Bentwaters is located a few miles northeast of Woodbridge in Suffolk and, the airfield was originally named after the village of Butley, which, was situated 1 mile to the southeast of the construction site. Doesn't need the commas, Bruce. The airfield was still under construction when, on the 23rd of January 1943, it was renamed Bentwaters after a house originally located on the airfield's main runway. The airfield opened in April 1944, but was not officially activated until the 22nd of November 1944. And, it is interesting to note, that Bentwaters was the last RAF airfield to be activated during the Second World War. During its caretaker period, many aircraft had made emergency landings, the first being a Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress bomber from the 8th Air Force's 96th Bombardment Group. From the 1st of December 1944 until the 4th of May 1945, the date of the last sortie flown from RAF Bentwaters, the airfield housed 6 North American P-51 fighter squadrons. The role of the fighters had been to escort the bombers during daylight raids. The Americans arrived in March 1951. I think they arrived before then, but the Americans arrived in March 1951. Since then, they have achieved many firsts. The airfield was first to receive the North American F-86A Sabres. Beer burps. No, that was the beer hiccups. I do apologise. Try it again. Since then, they have achieved many firsts. The airfield was first to receive the North American F-86A Sabres, September 1951. The first McDonnell Douglas F-101 Voodoos arrived in December 1958. Now another first. The first American base to treat the base personnel who had witnessed supernatural happenings as simple and silly. The base authorities have tried to play down the situation, but that is not possible. Fear of something you can see is one thing, but fear of something you cannot see, entirely different. Over the past few years, there have been a spate of suicides at Royal Air Force Bentwaters. The reason for the suicides remains a mystery. The base was just getting over the death of a young pilot when, for no apparent reason, a young airman gassed himself in a motor vehicle. There was an immediate investigation as to why. He's done it again. There was an immediate investigation as to why, the young airman should have taken his own life. Doesn't need the comma, Bruce, really. There was an immediate investigation as to why the young airman should have taken his own life, full stop. That's right. He was well liked by everyone. No enemies, had settled well at Bentwaters, and only the day before his death had received a letter from his girlfriend saying she was coming over to England to visit him. The investigation drew a complete blank into the reason for his death. Had it a much more sinister side to it? Was it, as rumours suggested, a supernatural suicide? No, Bruce. A few weeks after the young airman's death, a female officer left the officers' club ready to turn in for the night and, headed for her billet. On the way, she passed an airman who never saluted, spoke, or moved. I felt cold as I approached the airman, who seemed unnatural, she said. I noticed he was wearing camouflage clothing, but as I neared him, he melted into the shadows. Before she had time to do anything, a male officer caught up with her and she pointed out to him the airman in the shadows. But when the male officer challenged the mystery airman, he disappeared. The alarm was sounded and a full search was launched, but security found no one, even though dogs were used in the search. For the next few days, all the talk was about the mystery airman. Then it settled back into normal routine. It should be into, not into. Or should it be? I think it is into, one word anyway, but not for long. Just 10 days after the eerie incident, a fitter was working on a Fairchild A-10 Thunderbolt aircraft in one of the hardened shelters. He was working alone, and with it being a warm night, the shelter doors were open. Correct use of a comma there, Bruce. Well done. Suddenly, he felt it all turn very cold, an eerie, chilly cold, which made him stop working and turn around. As he did so, he noticed an airman at the back of the hardened shelter. He was dressed in camouflage clothing and moving towards the open doors. The fitter, who had been working on the A-10, shouted, "Hi there!" But the mystery airman did not reply. And as he passed close to the A-10 aircraft, it then dawned on the fitter that he had not seen the mystery airman enter the shelter. His blood froze when he realized that the strange and eerie airman moved without making a sound. In a cold sweat, the fitter climbed down from the A-10 and dashed outside, but the ghostly airman was nowhere in sight. Yet the hardened shelter was in the open and away from the other buildings. It was impossible for any human being to have crossed the open ground in those few seconds. So it had to be a ghost airman. But what was the purpose of his visit? Over the years, numerous sightings have upset the base personnel. Those in command at Bentwaters have played down the supernatural happenings by way of blaming practical jokers and people's imaginations. But is that the right answer? The crest of the 81st Tactical Fighter Wing is a fire-breathing dragon. So, is it a battle between demons and dragons? And up to now, the demons are winning. That's a stretch, Bruce. That is a stretch. Goodness me. But we'll mark the page. What are we up to? 34 minutes. Yeah, half time. Half time. Looks for wasabi snack mix. There it is. Japanese style mixed rice snacks. These are lovely, by the way. Half time. What have you been up to today? Well, he said, eating with his mouth full of little Japanese style rice snack mix. Oh, hello. My Facebook isn't working. Why isn't my Facebook working? Mine's working now. So, I had a brilliant lunch today with friend Julia. I popped into town. That sounds like a cue for a Genesis song. Pop into town. There's a job for you in the fire escape trade. No, I had a splendid lunch with friend Julia. So here we go. It was in a share screen. It was in a place called, come on, share screen. I've got to have to look it up again now. I've forgotten. It was in a place called Chris and Joe's Kitchen. Absolutely brilliant. This was a risotto. It was a vegetarian risotto. I saw it on the menu and I thought, well, that's what I'm having. Rather curiously, it was also what Julia went for as well. So it was delicious, absolutely delicious. Then we decided that we'd have some pudding as well. I had the sticky toffee pudding with ice cream. Oh my goodness me, it was Gert Lush. It was very nice. And that's the place, Chris and Joe's Kitchen. And there is my good friend Julia enjoying her sorbet. And there we are. God, I look old, but never mind. But yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. Oh no, I haven't shared the pictures. Goodness me. Doing well tonight, folks. There we go. There was the risotto. There's the risotto. That was delicious. That was the sticky toffee pudding. That was also delicious. That's the place, Chris and Joe's Kitchen. Absolutely brilliant. I will be going back there at some stage. And there is my good friend Julia enjoying her sorbet. And there we are enjoying our lunch. So absolutely brilliant. I do appreciate her time and patience today because I do struggle around people sometimes. My speech patterns become a little bit strained, and also I kind of lose the thread quite quickly because of the old. So I'm grateful for friends who understand that and accommodate me, so that if I'm halfway through explaining something and I suddenly go, I forgot what the story is, and they kind of read it back to me and I go, yes, I do remember now. So that was that. So that was brilliant. Thank you, Julia. I do appreciate, like I said, I do appreciate your generosity in understanding what an absolute pain in the ass I can be. But anyway, here we go. This is my patio today. I've moved my 2 sweet peas so that they're now either side of my chair on the patio, because the second pot of sweet peas has now started to flower rather. Oh my goodness me, to sit there with the smell of sweet peas and also borage, which is self-seeded in there as well. Absolutely brilliant. There he is, the star of the show, Derpzoid, out on the patio this morning. So he's in the same place tonight, actually. So there we go. And then what else? What else have we been up to today? Oh, here we go. This is one of my favorite flowers. Welcome to Sunday Night Flower Show. This is one of my favorite flowers. This is Statice or sea lavender. Grown this in the past because Lidl do the packets of seeds for about, I think they're about 39p or something. Absolutely brilliant. These have taken quite a while to get around to flowering, but flowering they are. And there you go. Isn't that absolutely beautiful? What a delicate small flower. Multicolored as well. Pollinators love Statice or sea lavender. Just fabulous. So I have got some more seed packets, which I will sow probably in the autumn. But yeah, look at that. Amazing. And there is the sea lavender on the patio next to its namesake, lavender, ordinary lavender. So yeah, absolutely lovely to sit out there with the sweet peas and the sea lavender. Yeah, winner Christmas dinner. Here we go. These are the pots on my steps coming down to the front door. So this is the first time this year I've managed to get some pots filled with flowers. Would you believe those flowers were just kind of like ones that were being sold off cheap because they were on their last legs. Nope, I got them home, gave them a damn good watering, put them in the pot, packed them into the pot, and there we go. So, and what's the next one? No, that's not that one. And finally, here we go. So, having been down on the West Somerset Railway and being so impressed with all the cottage gardens on the railway stations, I've tried to recreate that on a couple of patches in my garden. So we've got that one. That's mostly illumins and some begonias, but it's a start, and they will fill out a bit like the pots out front. And then the little concrete bed on the patio, I've got a pot that's had some grass in it for ages, ornamental grass. That's now been dug in, and there are also some dahlias there. I think they're dahlias. Are they dahlias? Can't remember. No, they're not dahlias. Forgotten what they are, but anyway, they're lovely. So I've dug them in as well. They'll bush out as well. So, yep. And that's an oxeye daisy that has rocked up on my rocked up in one of my pots as well. Might have sown seeds for it. I can't remember, but yeah, we do like a nice oxeye daisy. I've just got to try and remember what those blessed plants are. So bear with me a second whilst I just go and identify them for a second. I've got sweet corn I've got to plant out tomorrow. Bear with. What do you do on Friday night? Well, I was watching Sunday Night Ghost Stories Extra, but then, as always, he stops the show dead because he's faffing around with his bloody phone again. I am faffing around with my bloody phone, and no. As soon as these come up, I'll know exactly what they are. No, it's not a dog rose. Bear with, I know what they are. No, it's Herb Robert common stalkspill. No, we'll identify it later on. But yeah, so that's been my day really. Trying to think what else I'm going to be doing. Solid gardening tomorrow and BBC proms in the evening, some workshop time. So few complaints. And also when I finished tonight's show, supper is already prepped for tonight. I'll sit down and start watching the new series of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which I love. So anyway, cheers me dears. Oh, slange. Oh, then I'll top up of that. Yeah, it's going to be a trip to Lidl tomorrow to get some more Balmure for Sunday, but hey ho. I'm trying to remember what those blessed flowers are called. Dianthus. Yeah, they're dianthus. That's what they are. So yes, of course it is, because I meant to make the pun "live and let dianthus" on Facebook. So me make puns. Have you met me? Right. Let's continue. Mitt the ghost stories. Oh, we were going to look up the badge for 81st Tactical Fighter Squadron. Oh, there we go. The beer burps at 45 minutes and 59 seconds. That's more like it. That's a proper beer burp. 81st Tactical Fighter Squadron, right. So 81st Tactical Fighter Squadron. I get the feeling I've drawn this at some stage. Except all, I have drawn this as a badge in my day job of doing artwork for organizations. Yep, there we go. Share screen, share screen, share screen. 81st Tactical Fighter Squadron. So that's what it looks like, folks. There we go. That's what it looks like. So that was that when they referred to in that chapter, the crest of the 81st fighter, the crest of the 81st Tactical Fighter Wing is a fire-breathing dragon. No, it appears to be a Tiger. That's an F-86 Sabre, Donald Douglas Phantom, A-10 Thunderbolt. That looks like a Super Tucano, another Super Tucano. Oh, there we go. That's the no. So it's definitely not a fire-breathing dragon, mate. Well, just scrolling through the Wikipedia site here. No, there we go. 81st Fighter Squadron emblem. Do you know what? We will clarify that because 81st Fighter Squadron badge. God, I feel like I'm doing the day job here, and pretty much it's a big cat in all of them. The official emblem of the 81st Fighter Squadron, formerly the 81st Tactical Fighter Squadron, features a Black Panther head symbolizing fierce capability and combat readiness. So it's not a dragon, Bruce. Make of that what you will. Oh, right. Part 2 of the show. Marks the page. The Unseen Servant. In 1941, construction work started on an airfield just west of the village of Ossington in Nottinghamshire. The site had been selected as a bomber station, and a standard bomber airfield with 3 runways was constructed. But soon after opening in January 1942, it was transferred to Flying Training Command. I know you're all thinking I've just said the word "and." Has Bruce put a comma in after "and"? Yep. The North Wood in the north and the High Wood to the south were turned into natural cover for the living site and other support buildings. During the construction of the airfield, Ossington Hall, once the home of the Cartwright family, was commandeered by the Royal Air Force and used as an unarmed combat school for aircrew. The men were billeted in the hall, and part of the accommodation, people are going to turn off from this show because it just every time it's almost as if he sees the word and goes, oh, it needs a comma after it. It bloody doesn't need a comma. Anyway, the men were billeted in the hall, and part of the accommodation was in the old servants' quarters on the top floor at the rear of the building, with 2 men in each of the tiny rooms. None of that, Bruce, requires a comma. At the end of the corridor was a former bedroom, which, he's put comma, had been turned into a washroom. Doesn't need a comma. On the 8th of November 1941, Sergeant Walter Billingham, number 744841, was posted to Ossington Hall, and, he soon became aware of a strange atmosphere which, seemed to pervade through the hall. It seemed as if our presence was in some way resented, said Sergeant Billingham. Was it a warning? Should have been a warning not to use superfluous bloody commas. Sorry, I'm a bit sweary tonight, but anyway, cheers, me beers. Slash. Sergeant Billingham shared a room which was a most unusual shape with Sergeant Astley. On their 3rd night at the hall, Sergeant Billingham was abruptly awakened by shouts from the washroom which was next door. He sprang out of bed, grabbed a torch, for there was no electric light, and went to investigate. I shone the light round the washroom and was stunned to see Ashley crouching on the floor as if in a state of shock, said Billingham. He was unable to move, and as I stared at him, I could feel the hair stand on the back of my neck. There was an evil presence in the room. At that moment, several of the other men entered the washroom, but all were bent double, as if held down by some unseen force. It was very eerie, said Sergeant Billingham. As I watched, one by one, they ran into the wall and flaked out in a heap on the floor. Sergeant Billingham stood rooted to the floor, unable to move, held by an unseen force. His torch played a ghostly light on a heap of bodies, and he had been helpless to help them. His torch played on a ghostly light. His torch played a ghostly light on a heap of bodies, and he had been helpless to help them. Doesn't need the comma. And he had been helpless to help them. Or, Bruce, he had been unable to help them. The following day, what do you do on Friday night? I tune in to watch Sunday Night Ghost Stories Extra, but instead I watched a confused man from Dudley with holes in his head getting very angry about a dead writer and his writing style. Yeah. The following day, an investigation was started to try and solve the mystery. Medical officers tested the water supply and the previous day's food, but all was found to be in order, and after 3 days of intense investigation, no explanation was found. Sergeant Billingham wondered why he had been spared and could only think it was because he was unarmed. All the other men had entered the washroom armed, bent double like evil monsters from another world. Within 2 weeks of the ghostly incident, Sergeant Walter Billingham was posted away from Ossington Hall. There had been a change of plans. RAF Ossington had a sudden change of roles from Bomber Command to Flying Training Command. Had the change come about because of the unseen servant? Many thought that was the reason. It had been very unnerving, and fear was in the eyes of everyone. So a change of role for the airfield, which was built on land which once belonged. There you go. Many thought it was the reason. It had been very unnerving, and fear was in the eyes of everyone. So a change of role for the airfield, which was built on land which once belonged to the Hall. In May 1943, the airfield was returned to Bomber Command. It closed in 1946, and today almost all the airfield buildings have disappeared. Ossington Hall was demolished in the mid-1960s. Only the presence of the unseen servant remains where the hall once stood. Oh, Bruce, you make this hard work on yourself. You really do. What are we up to? 55. I think this next chapter is going to be it for tonight. But we are going to have, goodness me, the Love Lane Brewery Blackbird Extra Stout, 6.7%. Blackbird Extra Stout, brewed under the watchful eyes of the liver birds. Roasted barley, flaked oats, and a selection of dark malts are combined to create a robust dark stout with notes of coffee, rich toffee, and chocolate, finished with a lingering tannic bitterness. A special release from Love Lane. I bloody love this beer. Malts, Golden Promise, Crystal Oats, Wheat, Chocolate, Black. Hops, Admiral. Nose, chocolate, rich toffee. Palate, creamy coffee sweetness. Finish, tannic bitter. UK units, 2.9, IBU 50. Extra stout ale. Ingredients: water, malted barley, oats, wheat, hops, yeast for allergens, including cereals containing gluten. See ingredients in bold. Store chilled. Serve 11 to 13 degrees Celsius. Drink fresh. Love Lane Brewery, 62 to 64, Bridgewater Street, but not our Bridgewater. This one has an extra E in it. Baltic Triangle, Liverpool, L10AY. Love Lane Brewery. Oh, I love this stuff. So God bless you, Home Bargain, for stocking this, because I loves it. I absolutely loves it. And I think it's £1.39 a can, so that fits in with our budget. Right, we're going to have to wait for that to settle out a bit. Let's crack on, because quite frankly, I's girt hungry. Chapter 10, The Culham and Newnham Ghosts. But what the hell were 5 sailors doing there? Said Brian Lee, who had just witnessed 5 Navy men vanish into thin air. That was how I ended the story, the 5 Navy men in my first ghost stations. Since then, more information from those who served at Culham and deeper research has uncovered an eerie mystery that belongs to the supernatural world. Actually, the 5... I am curious, because we do have here ghost stations. The 5 sailors of... I can't even see it on the list of ghost stories. Oh, the 5 Navy men, yeah, 140. The 5 Navy men. You know what, we'll read this one, just to give context. The 5 Navy men. Having served 9 years in the Royal Air Force, Brian Lee continued in uniform with the ATC. In June 1959, he was at Culham Airfield in Oxfordshire. Culham, a naval airfield known as HMS Hornbill, was a satellite of Royal Air Force Abingdon, and it had opened in November 1944 as a centre for naval reservists. The Royal Navy Ferry Pool was also based at Culham, with many types of aircraft. The airfield continued after the war with number 1832 Squadron, flying Supermarine Seafires, North American Harvards, and Hawker Sea Furies. And number 1840 Royal Navy Volunteer Reserve Squadron formed at Culham in April 1951, with Fairey Firefly aircraft. HMS Hornbill closed to flying in 1953. Culham was then used by the Admiralty as a store, and it housed the permanent staff of number 1 Parachute Training School, Parachute Regiment, and Royal Air Force personnel. They had breakfast at Culham and an evening meal when the recruits came back from their day's training at Royal Air Force Abingdon, which was under Royal Air Force Transport Command. In the early hours on that particular June morning, Brian Lee was awakened by a violent thunderstorm. He opened his eyes and lay looking at the glow of the old pot-bellied stove reflecting on the roof of the Nissen hut, which was their quarters. As he looked, the glow seemed to get brighter. Then suddenly it struck him as unusual, as it was summertime. He turned and sat bolt upright in bed. It was then I saw 5 Navy types sitting round the stove, he said. They were definitely Royal Navy, and one was an officer, for he had 2 gold rings on his cuff. There was possibly one other officer type, and he could have been a chief petty officer. Brian sat and stared, unable to believe his eyes. There they were, so clear and only a few feet away. They were all in their best uniforms and not in working dress, he said. Also, all were bandaged in one way or another with bandages on their arms or hands and heads. The officer's face was very boyish looking, and no one had a beard. Brian Lee's first feeling was one of shock. They had not looked towards him as he sat up in his bed. After some 30 seconds, I let out a shout, he said, and as soon as I did, they disappeared. Lee jumped out of bed and rushed towards the stove, waking his mates as he did so. He stood looking at the old stove. Then I put out my hand and touched it. It was stone cold, said Brian. Middle of summer, mate. Any surprise? For the rest of the night, Brian Lee sat up smoking with his mates. They pulled his leg, but two of them later changed billets after refusing to sleep in that particular Nissen hut. I'm a fairly level-headed bloke, said Brian. But what the hell were 5 sailors doing there? There we go. So that's the context of this story. We've just bumped through the hour mark, so we're going to have some more Japanese-style rice snack mix. What do you know on Friday night? I watched a confused man from Dudley with holes in his head, stuffing his face for a Japanese-style rice mix from Lidl. And talking with his mouth full. Wow. An hour into the show, we're only just starting the second beer. And Ron BT.
Oh, it's jolly nice of you. Hello, dead soldier. Seen plenty of those in my time.
That'll be a copyright strike from Facebook. Anyway, Lee saw the 5 Navy men very clearly, and at first was unaware they were ghosts. It was only the fact that it was a hot night in June 1959, and he suddenly realized, after being awoken by a thunderstorm, that the Nissen hut stove was glowing red hot. He then saw the 5 Navy men standing around it. Another who was stationed at Culham was senior aircraftman Alan Allchurch, who has come forward with a wealth of information. Again, errant comma there, Bruce, doesn't need it. Alan was an RAF signals telephonist at Culham from early December 1956 until demobbed at the beginning of May 1958. At the time, SAC Alan Allchurch arrived at Culham. The Newnham Courtney mansion, which only a very short distance to the north from Culham Airfield, was still occupied by the Royal Air Force. They had been at the mansion since the wartime requisition in the late 1930s, and when they finally left in 1957, the General Post Office gave their mail to the Royal Air Force signals sections to be redirected and forwarded. At that stage, Alan Allchurch, who became involved with the mansion, which had many strange supernatural stories circulating about it, said, "The place was and still is haunted. There is a very funny atmosphere about the place. An RAF policeman with whom I was friendly told me he was very skeptical of the stories and did not believe the mansion was haunted. But he was soon to change his mind." Man. One night, he was ordered to a certain upstairs room in the mansion accompanied by 2 police dogs. Whilst he himself could not detect anything strange about the room, the 2 dogs obviously could because they refused to enter the room. And he added, "It is obvious the mansion is the centre of all the supernatural happenings." The Nissen huts, one of which the 5 Ghost Navy one in which the 5 Ghost Navy airmen were seen, were north of the airfield in Furze Brake Wood, on the edge of Newnham Park, which contains the haunted mansion. Oh, the bit about scan, do apologise. But why the 5 Navymen? That is still a mystery, and with all the wartime Nissen huts now demolished, will remain a mystery. Again, errant use of a comma there, Bruce. It's almost like he sees the word and decides, that needs a comma behind it. No, it's a linking word. Anyway, had they something to do with the naval sick quarters, which was located nearby? Had there been some sort of disaster? Or was it just the casualties of war regrouping in the spirit world? It will remain a mystery, for the old naval sick quarters building had also been demolished. Only the ghosts remain. Newnham Park was created by 2 men, the first and second Earls Harcourt, and work began in 1756 and was completed in 1760. That was rapid. In 1777, Earl Harcourt, who had spent much of his life abroad, retired to Newnham, but within a few weeks at Newnham was killed trying to save his little dog, which had fallen into a well. But had it been deliberate? Horace Walpole, who found the Earl, said, "After much searching, he was found standing on his head in a well, an odd exit for the governor of a king." What a strange thing to say. Was it a curse for destroying the village of Newnham Courtney and the medieval church for park improvement? The second Earl inherited Newnham in 1777 and remained there until his death in 1809. Since then, it has changed hands many times, and when the Royal Air Force had no further use for the mansion and handed it back, Lord Harcourt sold the Newnham estate to the University of Oxford. After extensive restoration, the mansion was leased to the Rothmans International Tobacco UK Limited. After extensive restoration, the mansion was leased to Rothmans International Tobacco UK Limited, who are using it as a centre for management training. What a drag. The mansion has gardens. The mansion and gardens are open to visitors at certain times during the summer. God, this still goes on for another 2 pages. Oh. What are we up to? Hour and 10 minutes. Oh, it's nice. Derpy's come in, by the way. I will quickly break character for a second. There he is, perched on the windowsill. So I don't blame him. It's a hot old night. Strange. Over the years, there have been many ghost stories. "I was at the house for a period during the war years," said Jack Smithson. "I was halfway up the main stairs when a woman in a long white dress and brown cloak passed me. I could not move, and as I turned to look, she just disappeared." The ghostly figure has been seen many times on the first floor and on the stairs. Whilst the building was being renovated in 1979, some of the workmen saw the white lady ghost. 2 of them were so petrified they refused to work at Newnham Park and asked to leave the job. There have been many other sightings. It is almost certain the White Lady, is the ghost of Marie Therese, first wife of Sir William Harcourt, grandson of Edward Harcourt of Plantagenet descent. Mary, God, this is weird. This I'm looking at these. I've got to show you this. It looks like on the page proofs, somebody marked the umlauts in pen. How bizarre. Mary Therese died in 1863 in childbirth. The baby boy lived and became Lewis Vernon Harcourt, 1st Viscount Harcourt. He became a politician and, with Viscount Esher, founded the, again, errant use of a comma, Bruce. He became a politician and, with Viscount Esher, founded the London Museum in 1911. He died in 1922. However, prior to the birth of Lewis, Mary Therese had another son, Julian, born on the 6th of October 1860, but who unfortunately died. Who unfortunately, should be another comma there, Bruce, died on the 2nd of March 1862. The ghostly perambulations of the White Lady are said to be Mary Therese searching for her firstborn and take her from the south wing first floor of the building into the main block, down the staircase, out of the front door and up to the chapel where Julian is buried in the family vault. Let's just have a see. Again, errant use of a comma there, Bruce. Never mind, I'm not going to carry on about it. Those who have seen the ghost of Marie Therese report that she wears a brown cloak. I'll just have a quick look to see. No, this next chapter, that's going to be for next time. So, Slange. In the magnificent United Federation of Planet Shot Glass, courtesy of friends Kirsten and Steve in the United States, God bless you. Do you know what? We are going to top that off with the last of the Balmure tonight. Goodness me, it's one of those nights where we've ended up with 3 dead soldiers. And run VT.
Oh, it's jolly nice of you. Hello, dead soldier. Seen plenty of those in my time.
Indeed. There is also reputed to be a ghost of a tweenie who is supposed to have committed suicide by leaping from the top of the main staircase. Also, there is a ghost in the North Wing who, during the war years, was seen many times in the bedrooms, always stood at the end of the beds. A ghost has also been seen many times walking down the side path of the house. Newnham Park is certainly haunted, and the grounds have a strange and eerie feeling, especially at night. And Newnham Courtney Mansion will always be remembered for its ghosts, but it is interesting to note that on the 4th of July, 1862, the year in which Julian Harcourt died, Charles Lutwidge Dodgson, better known to the world as Lewis Carroll, the pseudonym under which he wrote, took a boat trip up the River Thames with his friend Robinson Duckworth, Fellow of Trinity and 3 sisters of Henry Liddell, Dean of Christ. But it is interesting to note that on the 4th of July, 1862, the year in which Julian Harcourt died, Charles Lutwidge Dodgson, better known to the world as Lewis Carroll, the pseudonym under which he wrote, took a boat trip up the River Thames with his friend Robinson Duckworth, Fellow of Trinity, and three sisters of Henry Liddell, Dean of Christ Church. They stopped and picnicked in the grounds of Newnham Courtney Mansion, which extended to the banks of the River Thames. During the picnic, Dodgson told the three Liddell girls, whose names were Lorena, Edith, and Alice, a fairy tale of Alice's adventures underground. He later wrote this out for Alice, and in 1865, a book was published called Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, the idea of which was born in the grounds of Newnham, and in later life he tried to return to write in the Alice vein, but could not do so. Was it because he did not return to Newnham? Also influenced by Newnham was Jerome K. Jerome, who in the late 1880s wrote Three Men in a Boat, which was to attain worldwide success. In the book, Jerome makes a brief reference to Newnham Courtney Mansion. From Abingdon to Newnham Courtney is a lovely stretch. Newnham Park is well worth a visit. It can be viewed on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The house contains a fine collection of pictures and curiosities, and the grounds are very beautiful. Those very grounds in which the idea was born for Alice in Wonderland. Culham closed in 1960, and today very little remains of the old Culham site. All the buildings, except one, have been demolished. Only the concrete bases remain. The road system has been taken up, and what was once the campsite is now nothing more than rough pasture land. The lone building and the open-ended fire appliance garage is being used by a local farmer for storage. I think we'll wrap this one up, Dirt. Oh, lovely. Slange. In 1960, the Atomic Energy Commission moved in, and what was once HMS Hornbill is now Culham Laboratory, which has mushroomed or mushroom clouded, because it's the Atomic Energy Commission. Anyway, in 1960, the Atomic Energy Commission moved in, and what was once HMS Hornbill is now Culham Laboratory, which has mushroomed in the centre of what was the old airfield. The ghosts of Newnham seem to be non-destructive, passive, and intent on their own business, and not in the business of scaring off present-day incumbents. But is there a more sinister side to Culham? Oh, the beer vote's again. I do apologise. But is there a more sinister side to Culham? In the autumn of 1988, nuclear scientists working in the laboratory at Culham achieved a world record temperature of 100 million degrees centigrade, 10 times hotter than the sun. They held this incredible heat for several seconds. This is into the unknown, nuclear fusion, the source of energy of the stars, the supernatural world of Frankenstein. I think we'll have a thunderclap there. Right. The next time we do ghost stories, which will be Sunday, to quote the Goons, we will be down amongst the Z-men. But that will be for Sunday, which is 2 days' time. So, Slange Vivar. Delicious. Slange. Deliciouser. Right. They're off downstairs to be cleaned, ready for Sunday. Anything else to report, Dirk? No, I can't think of anything else to say. Fingers crossed. We'll be back for, brace yourselves, Sunday Night Ghost Stories on a Sunday. So until then, it behoves me to say thank you for watching. Why not? What else are you going to do on a Friday night than watch a confused man from Dudley with holes in his head, drink ghost stories and read alcohol? There's no World Cup on anymore, although we did finish third place, so that was absolutely tanked the French, so that was good news. But yeah, no World Cup on anymore. BBC Proms is still on, so that's good news. So anyway, until the next time, as ever, thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay out of trouble, and please don't have nightmares. Good night.